this morning. We are in Bozeman, Montana. It's great to have folks from around the country here, so welcome. I'm going to be your MC this morning. I've got a couple paleontologists here to celebrate Dinosaur Week with you, but I'm going to be asking questions and giving you an intro here this morning. So we are in Bozeman, Montana. I'm going to switch to my computer for just a second to show you where that is. So it'll take me just a minute. I'm going to hop off camera. Perfect. All right, so looks like you should be able to see our welcome screen there. Feel free to chat if something's not working. But I'm going to start off by showing you where we are. So we've got folks from around the country this morning, and we are sitting there with where our Google pin is there in Montana, up on the northern part of the Rocky Mountains in the U.S. We're just north of Yellowstone National Park, so we're going to zoom in here to the state of Montana. And here we are. We're, like I said, right there above Yellowstone in Bozeman. Here is our building. So Museum of the Rockies is well known for its dinosaur collections, and that's what we're going to be talking about today to celebrate Dinosaur Week. This dinosaur will greet you as you enter the Museum of the Rockies. Let's go ahead and try out that chat feature. Can anybody guess what kind of dinosaur this is a replica of? Go ahead and type right into that chat box if you got a guess. What dinosaur is sitting outside of our museum? Fantastic. There we go. Great. Glad to see that's working. Yeah, that's right. That's a T-Rex. Museum of the Rockies has one of the largest collections of T-Rexes in the world. So let's head on inside our building. Here's some of our paleontological models you'll meet later today, parading into our Dinosaurs Under the Big Sky exhibit in our Siebel Dinosaur Complex. So today we're going to be talking about what is a dinosaur and some of the dinosaurs we have here at MOR, or the Museum of the Rockies. But I thought we'd start by giving you a quick glimpse into our exhibit upstairs. So this is the first hall that greets you as you enter our dinosaur exhibit, with another dinosaur sitting there on the top of one of our cases. Can you guess what dinosaur that is? Go ahead and type into that chat box. What dinosaur is taking up most of the screen there? I'll give you a few minutes to try and guess. There's a few other specimens behind, but what's that full skeleton of? Anybody know? Velociraptor, good guess. This is a tricky one for you. This is an Allosaurus that's greeting you up there on top of that case. And there's some other, like I said, some other specimens behind there, but this is our Hall of Giants. Let's take a walk around the corner in our dinosaur halls. Here are our T-Rex and Triceratops. So we have many specimens of T-Rex and Triceratops. You'll learn more about both of those today. Here's a couple replicas of a Triceratops. And one of the great things about the Museum of the Rockies collections is that we have sequences of fossils on display, so you can see how dinosaurs grew over time. So I'm going to zoom out of this. I'm going to switch back to our camera so we can get started here. It'll take me just a second. And there we go. Hopefully you can see me. So welcome. So we just took a look at the Museum of the Rockies Dinosaur Complex, our main hall that's open to visitors year-round. And now we are in a different part of the building. We are underneath that dinosaur hall here in one of our collection spaces. So Museum of the Rockies holds fossils, holds dinosaur specimens on behalf of both the federal and state of Montana. And we've got two paleontologists here today that'll tell you more about that. We've got Dr. John Scannella, he's our curator of paleontology, and we've got Scott Williams, who's our paleontology lab and field specialist. So these two gentlemen are going to walk us through dinosaurs today, but I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Scannella first. So thanks for joining us, Dr. Scannella.
Thanks. Hey, everybody. So we're here in the collections of the Museum of the Rockies, and in this room it contains one of the largest collections of dinosaurs in the world, really, all kinds of dinosaurs, but mostly dinosaurs found here in Montana. And so before we dive into the dinosaurs of Montana, we'll talk a little bit about what dinosaurs were. And so dinosaurs started out as basically a word made in 1842 to describe some big reptile-like creatures that were being discovered that were gigantic and kind of different from other reptiles that had been found. And so the word dinosaur was made, which means terrible lizards or fearfully great lizards. And so over time, more and more species of dinosaurs have been discovered since that time. And but not all creatures that we find in the fossil record or in the rocks are dinosaurs. There's other fossils from long ago that aren't dinosaurs. So for example, if you're looking through the fossil record, you might find something like this here. Does anyone know the name of this creature?
If you know the name or have a guess, go ahead and type it into that chat box. Any guesses? You may have stumped them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So this is often...
Oh, here we go.
Oh.
Stegosaurus. There's a guess for you.
That's a good guess. This is an animal that's often presented as being a dinosaur, but actually lived before dinosaurs. And this is what's called a dimetrodon, which is more closely related to mammals like you and I than it is to other dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are, they're kind of special in that they were large-bodied reptiles and their legs were situated directly under them. So they didn't have this sprawling kind of motion of their arms and legs like we see in alligators and crocodiles today. If you look at them, how they move, they kind of, their arms and legs are to the sides of their body. Whereas in a dinosaur, like this long-necked sauropod dinosaur, the arms and legs are directly under the body. So another animal that's often, let's see, mistaken for a dinosaur, which this one? Okay. Anyone know what this creature is?
Go ahead and type into that chat box if you've got a guess. We've got a guess of pterodactyl.
Oh, very good. So this is a pterosaur, a flying reptile, which is very closely related to dinosaurs, but technically aren't dinosaurs. They're basically just outside of what are considered dinosaurs. So often in books or sometimes movies, you might see people point to flying reptiles like a pterosaur and say, "Oh, dinosaurs," but they're actually not dinosaurs. Similarly, creatures like this, giant swimming reptiles like this mosasaur are sometimes thought to be dinosaurs, but they're more closely related to modern lizards and snakes than dinosaurs are. So, oh, and another favorite. So this is a woolly mammoth, which looks very much like a modern elephant, but kind of shaggy. And this is a mammal, again, like you and me, and not a dinosaur. But there were numerous types of dinosaurs that lived on the planet in what's known as the Mesozoic era, a time period that lasted from about 250 million years ago until about 66 million years ago. And this is sometimes called the age of dinosaurs, because it's when dinosaurs ruled the earth, and they diversified into a number of different types of dinosaurs. So there were, let's see, horned dinosaurs like these two here, where they have big horns on their heads and bony frills, and sometimes they have big spikes on their skulls, like that one there. There's also the armored dinosaurs, the ankylosaurs, which could have big tail clubs and big bony osteoderms all over their bodies. And then there's big theropod dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus rex, which is probably one of the most famous of dinosaurs. And then, of course, the long-necked sauropod dinosaurs. And so there are numerous different species of dinosaurs. I think about 1,000 species of dinosaurs have been named so far. But these dinosaurs all didn't live at the same time. So let me get my model here. This, if you imagine, when we go out and we look for dinosaurs, we go out into areas where you can see different layers of rock. And so basically when you're walking out amongst the rocks looking for dinosaurs, you're looking at different layers of time. And so generally as you go up and down through layers of rock, you're going up and down through time. So these, if you found fossils here, they would be younger than these ones, and these would be younger than these ones, because the layers of rock deposited first are the oldest. So the yellow layer there is older than the orange layer, which is older than this layer. And so basically, the age of dinosaurs, if you're looking at it in the rocks, is divided in such a way that you have older dinosaurs, and then younger dinosaurs, and then the youngest dinosaurs. And so the dinosaurs, much of Montana is covered by rocks deposited in what's known as the Cretaceous Period, which was the last period of dinosaurs. Includes some of the last dinosaurs, including Tyrannosaurus rex and Triceratops, which lived at the same time. And if you go into slightly older rocks, then you find older dinosaurs, such as this is a cast of the skull of that skeleton that you saw in the exhibit halls upstairs. This is an Allosaurus, which looks sort of like a Tyrannosaurus rex, but lived much earlier than T-Rex. So Allosaurus, because it lived earlier than T-Rex, it never would have encountered a Tyrannosaurus rex because they lived in separate time periods. They never would have met each other. But we can learn a lot about how these animals lived and what they did by studying their bones. And we can see that in some ways these dinosaurs that lived at different times were similar, and in some ways they were different. So for example, who can tell me what this is?
All right, if you've got a guess as to what Dr. Scannell is holding up, go ahead and type that into the chat box. We've got a couple guesses of a tooth.
It's a good guess. What kind of tooth?
We've got a guess of a claw, too. What kind of tooth? He's asking. Go ahead and type that in. Are you looking for a species name?
Yeah.
Okay. So what dinosaur is that tooth from? You've got a couple guesses of a T-Rex tooth.
Very good. So,
great job. Oh, here we go. Yeah, a lot of folks have responded T-Rex tooth.
Awesome.
Good job.
So this is the tooth of a Tyrannosaurus rex, and you might see in books or read or on TV that T-Rex had teeth that were about the size of a banana, and it's true. They had pretty big teeth. But another interesting thing about T-Rex teeth, if you look at them, they're pretty robust. They're thick. They're really big teeth. If we go back to the teeth of Allosaurus, the skull that I was just holding up, this is an Allosaurus tooth, and it's more blade-like, it's narrower. And so just by comparing the teeth of Allosaurus and T-Rex, we can see that one of them, the T-Rex, may have been had a more powerful bite. That might have been used more for crunching bone. Whereas Allosaurus had more of a slicing, slashing kind of tooth. So it suggests that they might have been doing things differently with how they're using their teeth. And on top of that, this is a tough one. Who can tell me what this is?
All right, if you've got a guess as to what Dr. Scannell is holding up, go ahead and put that in the chat box. Any guesses? What kind of fossil is he holding up? It is a bone. Can you guess which part? What type? We've got a guess of a Stegosaurus jawbone.
Good guess.
A horn. Some part of a T-Rex.
Oh.
A leg.
These are good guesses. Some part of a T-Rex is correct. So this is one of the lower arm bones of a T-Rex. And it's actually from the same T-Rex as this tooth. So here's a T-Rex tooth, and then here's the lower arm bone. And if you imagine if your lower arm bone one of your lower arm bones was about the size of your biggest tooth, or if your tooth was about the size of your lower arm, it shows you that T-Rex had really tiny arms compared to, well, if we compare it to other dinosaurs, for example, here's the same bone from that Allosaurus skeleton upstairs, compared to one of its teeth. And so, kind of like you and me, we have relatively smaller teeth compared to our arms, but T-Rex had these huge teeth and little tiny arms. And so, probably means that T-Rex was doing less with its arms than Allosaurus was. So here's one of the big claws from an Allosaurus hand. And so just by comparing some of the bones of T-Rex and Allosaurus, we can see that these animals were both eating meat. They both had sharp teeth for cutting through meat, but one of them was probably doing a bit more with its hands than the other one. This is one of the claws from the foot of a Tyrannosaurus rex. And you can see it's very sharp. It looks kind of like the talons that you might see on like an eagle or a hawk. And so it's very sharp and pointy. Now, if we compare this to what do the feet of a plant-eating dinosaur look like? This is a cast of a foot of a duck-billed dinosaur, which was a plant-eating dinosaur. And you can see at the end of the toes, not really like claws, but they're almost hoof-like nails. And so much less sharp and talon-like than we see in meat-eating dinosaurs like T-Rex and Allosaurus. Similarly, if we look at the teeth of plant-eating dinosaurs, this is the lower jaw of a duck-billed dinosaur named Brachioposaurus. And so you saw the teeth of T-Rex and Allosaurus, and they're kind of blade-like, sharp, but all these little diamond shapes here, these are the teeth of this duck-billed dinosaur. And there's like a bunch of them. They form what's called a dental battery. So these plant-eating dinosaurs, these hadrosaurs, had sometimes hundreds of teeth that would work together to grind away plants and wood and things like that. Okay, so just by looking at comparing the bones of different dinosaurs, we can learn a lot about what they were like as animals. So what were they eating? How were they using different parts of their bodies? How might they have moved? We can also learn quite a bit about dinosaurs by examining the way they're found in the rocks and what's found around them. One of the cool discoveries that was made several decades ago was does anyone know what this is?
All right. If you have a guess as to what Dr. Scannella is holding up, go ahead and type it into that chat box. There's a great suggestion to change your messaging to include all panelists and attendees. So there's a little blue button above where you can chat that you can type that you can select that all panelists and attendees. So our guesses that are coming in, Dr. Scannella, is a claw and 2 guesses for an egg. Anybody else have any guesses? I have a guess of a fossil and an egg and a toenail.
Sure.
Yeah. A jawbone is your last one.
Who had the egg answer?
Got a couple eggs. Got 3 egg guesses in there.
Okay, well the egg answer is correct. So dinosaurs laid eggs. It's one of the things we've known about for quite some time. Some of the first dinosaur eggs that we knew to be dinosaur eggs were found in Mongolia in the 1920s. And since then, we have found localities here in North America that also have eggs. One of the most famous localities, or probably the most famous locality, is called Egg Mountain. It is in the northwest part of Montana near a town called Choteau. And it was found in the late 1970s, and it was found by people including Dr. Jack Horner, who was a famous paleontologist that was part of the crew here at Museum of the Rockies for some time. And what was cool about that site in particular is that not only were there eggs found, dinosaur eggs in clutches and nests, but within the eggs themselves were found embryos. In other words, the babies were still inside the egg. Before that time, no other dinosaur embryos had been found, which made this site very, very significant. Also, it tells us, because we found evidence of the types of adult dinosaurs that laid these eggs in the area, that dinosaurs likely took care of their young for some time after they were, the nests were laid and the eggs were hatched. And some of these first dinosaurs that showed this were the duck-billed dinosaur called Maiasaura. And the name Maiasaura means good mother lizard. And so that started to change everyone's view on dinosaurs from being these kind of slow, sluggish, big lizards that didn't really care about their young. They would lay their eggs and just leave, things like that. So we have several different types of eggs that were found from the Egg Mountain area, including Maiasaurs, and also a cool little raptor-like dinosaur called Troodon. We found lots of these eggs throughout the years, and inside that we can again find embryos, and we can learn a lot from this. We can learn how these animals, how quickly they grow up from the time that they come out of their egg to the time that they're in adult form.
This is Maiasaur eggshell.
We will show you some examples. So this might be a little hard to see. I'll see if I can't zoom up. But just to show you how some of the very first eggs were found, this little thin chip here is part of an eggshell. And I've got a whole box full here. And often eggshells have different textures on the outside of them, which help identify what they are. Sometimes they're smooth, sometimes they have little bumps and speckles on them, and sometimes those shapes tell you exactly what kind of egg it is.
And sometimes you can look at the outside of the egg and see what kind of bumps are on it, but if you're lucky, you can open it up, and if you see here, these little dark spots are actually the little bones of an unhatched dinosaur still in the egg.
So one of the things that in paleontology that has been happening over the last several decades is that we've been trying to learn more about dinosaurs from the point that they're in their egg, to their little babies, to their juveniles, to their adolescents, to their teenagers, to their adults. So basically this whole process of documenting and showing how they change as they grow up and get older, we call ontogeny. And that has been a very important focus on the work and research that's going on here at Museum of the Rockies.
So before you move on, we have a couple of questions about the eggshells. Are eggshells hard?
Are they hard? Yes. So the eggshells here are hard. They're kind of brittle, actually. They're not very thick. I can break this eggshell very easily just by kind of pushing it together, crushing it. But they are hard, and often the inside part of the egg would be filled in with sediment, whether it be mud or silt or something like that. So the eggshells themselves are hard. The stuff that would be inside of the egg would be hard. And obviously in life, this egg would have egg fluid, soft tissue inside of it. So when we're looking for this stuff and we find it, we have to be somewhat delicate with these because you can again see how thin they are. So even though it's hard, it is a brittle fossil. It's been replaced with a kind of mineral, so it's not completely the same material that the eggshell originally was, if that makes sense.
How many eggshell pieces are in that box, about?
Huh.
Ooh, let's see if the tag tells us. No, it doesn't.
100? 200?
Maybe 200 or so.
Okay. And then another egg-related question. How long does it take for an egg to hatch?
Oh.
That's a good question.
That is a good question. So we can sometimes you can look at modern day examples of animals, and so we use that principle to inform some of our ideas when we look at things that are 10 million years old, 100 million years old, so on and so forth. So we might look at eggs today from a bird, from an ostrich, and see what your incubation period would be. In some cases, it's in probably the 60 to 90 day range. Do we actually have any data showing?
I think there was a study done on embryonic tooth histology showing that it took a bit longer to hatch than modern animals that lay eggs.
You remember that?
I don't remember what the time period was exactly, but their eggs were a bit longer, I think.
Okay. So Dr. Scannell has pointed out some research done on some embryonic dinosaur fossils that show that the dinosaur eggs that were studied probably lasted or took a little bit longer to incubate than your modern birds. So, but still probably within a 3 to 6 months range. We wouldn't expect them to be something beyond that, because then they would be longer than any other your reptiles that lay eggs and things like that. So we take a look at the way we would estimate this is that we would take a look at birds, which are your closest living relatives to dinosaurs, and we take a look at things like alligators and crocodiles, which are your next closest living relative, and see what their average incubation would be for eggs. And dinosaurs would probably fit somewhere in between birds and crocodiles and alligators, if that makes sense.
And you just answered another question too, but I'll let you clarify it one more time. Are there any living relatives of dinosaurs?
Well, sometimes we use the words dinosaurs to refer to the extinct group of dinosaurs, which are what we refer to the non-avian or the flightless dinosaurs. Dinosaurs actually exist today in bird form. Birds, for all intents and purposes, are feathered dinosaurs. They share well over 100 physical characteristics with some of your meat-eating dinosaurs, from hollow bones to air sacs, to the shape of their wrists, to the shape of their hips, to even how they lay their eggs, and the structure of the eggshell is similar to that of birds. So when we look at birds today, really we are looking at a group of dinosaurs that survived the mass extinction and then became the most diverse form of land vertebrate animals. There are more species of birds than there are of any other land vertebrate out there. They're a very, very successful group. So when we talk about dinosaurs going extinct, we're referring to, for lack of a better term, these kinds of dinosaurs that went extinct 66 million years ago, but their bird relatives made it through.
So a couple more questions on baby dinosaurs and eggs. So I'm gonna ask both of these together. Do we know how embryonic dinosaurs got their nutrients, and then do we know once they hatched how their parents fed them, or if they ate on their own?
Okay, they would have gotten their nutrients from the yolk, just like today. Like if you look at a chicken egg, something like that, they're getting what they need from the yolk. The eggshell itself is basically transmitting oxygen, bringing it back, bringing it through the eggshell, providing it to the embryo. When the animal hatched, we have evidence that some of the dinosaurs, Maiasaura, a few of the other smaller theropod dinosaurs, may have been cared for by their parents for some time. We don't know that for all the dinosaurs because we don't have nests for all the dinosaurs, but we do have evidence that for some dinosaurs there may have been parental care for some amount of time. If we go down to South America, there are vast nest sites for the big long neck dinosaurs, these groups called titanosaurs. And it looks like down there, they may well have laid their eggs and then left. And those little long neck hatchlings may have had to fend for themselves. And that makes sense. It would be very hard for an animal that's 70 to 80 feet long to navigate its way through a nest zone and not, step on its own babies when they're only about this big when they came out of the egg. So there's no hard and fast rule that we know of at this point for parental care in dinosaurs. We have evidence that there may have been parental care for some, but we also have evidence that there may have not been parental care for others.
So dinosaurs, do they drink milk from their mothers? This is a question.
Do they drink milk?
Drink milk from their mothers.
Okay. Well, that's a great question. That is one of the things that separates us from dinosaurs, because the production of milk is something that we see in mammals. So if you have a kitty, a puppy, a dog, things like that that had pups or kittens, they will get milk from their mother. We got milk from our mothers. Dinosaurs are a type of reptile, and like birds and other reptiles, they do not produce milk. So it's one of the things that separates dinosaurs from the group of mammals.
Last egg-related question. Do we know which dinosaurs lay the most eggs? Any idea on quantity of eggs laid? Oh, good question. You're gonna make them think.
I feel like
Good job, room 113.
At one time.
Yeah, at one time. Yep.
Boy, that might be sauropods.
It might be.
Good
question.
That's a good question.
That's a great question, you guys. Well done.
That we will hedge this a little bit and say it might be the big long neck dinosaurs. Which if the big long neck dinosaurs were not necessarily taking care of their young after they were hatched, it would make sense to lay more eggs. Therefore, you would have a greater likelihood that some of those babies would survive. I'm trying to remember some of those long neck sites, nest sites down in South America, how big the clutches were. I feel like there was quite a few in the nests. And if you look at a lot of animals today that do lay eggs, crocodiles in particular, they'll lay upwards of 100 eggs. But very few of those babies will make it to adulthood. So that is the trade-off. Lay a bunch of eggs, let them take care of themselves, and hopefully some of them will make it out and grow up, or lay fewer eggs and hang around and take care of those young, and invest that extra time and energy into making sure that the young grow up and get to a bigger stage of life before you send them on their merry way.
So one of the cool things we can look at is how rapidly dinosaurs were growing. So for example, Maiasaura, the duck-billed dinosaur, whose eggs were discovered back in the late 1970s, it hatched out of an egg that would have fit in your hand. And then when the dinosaur came out, it would keep growing. This is a nestling-sized Maiasaura, so still in the nest. But it would basically grow to about 9 feet in length in the first year of life. And so dinosaurs grew very rapidly. And we can tell this by looking inside the bones of dinosaurs. One of the things we do here is we can cut a slice out of dinosaur bone. So for example, this is a slice from the leg of a Tyrannosaurus rex. And so we've taken a piece out of this T-Rex so that we can make slides out of the bone. Before we do that, we take that piece and we make an exact replica of it, a cast, and we eventually paint this and put it back into the bone so that if someone wants to study that Tyrannosaurus leg bone, they can still measure it, they can still see what it looks like. But we have the original fossil piece, which is then embedded in resin like this. And then we take thin slices out of it. And we grind them down until they're so thin that light will pass through them. And so this is that same T-Rex leg bone, now on a slide. and ground so thin that we can examine it under a microscope. And when you do that, you can see certain things inside dinosaur bones that you can't necessarily tell by looking at just the outsides of dinosaur bones. For example, this T-Rex leg and the leg bones of other dinosaurs have lines that go around them called lines of arrested growth, which are kind of like tree rings in that if you count them, they tell you the number of years that that dinosaur was alive. And so in this way, we can tell how old dinosaurs were and how rapidly they were growing from one specimen to another. You want to say anything about T-Rex growth?
So this is when we had a question asked earlier of how long does a T-Rex live? Can you answer that one?
So I think there's a group from Chicago in here.
Yep, there's a couple.
At the Field Museum in Chicago is the oldest known Tyrannosaurus rex that's in any museum right now. That's Sue. Sue's also the largest and most complete Tyrannosaurus rex currently in any museum. Sue had that process done where Sue's bones were cut. They polished down a thin section and looked at that section under light and looked at the growth rings. And Sue was around 28 years old when Sue died. That there were 28 growth rings. That means that Sue was at least 28 years old when she died. She could have been older than that, but we don't know for how long after she completely stopped growing she lived, but she was at least 28 years old. So right now, based on that type of research that we've been doing with Tyrannosaurus rex, we can say that we're looking at these animals at least having a 30-year lifespan. We have examples of juvenile tyrannosaurs. If you go just 90 miles northwest of Chicago to a museum, Burpee Museum of Natural History in Rockford, Illinois, which is my old museum, we have a juvenile Tyrannosaurus rex named Jane. And Jane is about 11 to 12 years old, and she's less than half the size of Sue. She's as opposed to Sue, which is 43 feet long and about 14 feet tall at the hip and estimated around 8 tons in weight. Jane is about 22 feet long, 7.5 feet tall at the hip, and we estimate that she was around 1,500 pounds. So she wasn't even a full ton yet. So then we can create a growth chart, basically showing how quickly this animal, Jane, would grow to become an adult as big as Sue. And Tyrannosaurus rex went through an incredible growth spurt over a very short period of time. Some estimates put that growth spurt as basically an animal going from around less than a ton to 8 tons in 4 to 5 years. And that means you would have to put on about 5 pounds a day to meet that growth curve. And that is a very, very hyperactive growth series. Basically, you're looking at an animal that is kind of a super puberty in some ways.
So we have a couple questions. We're going to go right up till the hour today. And a couple of these are really fantastic. I want to make sure we get to. So we talked about looking at thin sections of fossils underneath the microscope. But there's a question out there about other technology that you use to study dinosaur fossils. Do you use any computer modeling or other technology in research?
One thing you can use is CT scans. So you can put dinosaur fossils into a CT scanner the same way you might put a person into a CT scanner to see inside of them. We can look inside dinosaur bones in that way and create a 3D image of what's happening inside the dinosaur bone, which can often tell us cool things that you can't normally see just by looking at the outside of the bones.
Great. This is a great question too. We're in a room full of amazing fossils. How do you know where to look for fossils, and how do you find them and bring them back to the museum?
So in order to find dinosaur fossils, you first need to go to places where the right age rock is exposed at the surface of the earth. And part of this is, a lot of this is work done by geologists who go out and map the surface of the earth and then chart where you can find certain aged rocks. So in Montana, for example, a lot of eastern Montana is covered by rocks from the Cretaceous. And that's the place where you want to go to find dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus rex and Triceratops and animals that lived at that time. So it really depends on what type of dinosaur you'd be interested in finding. If you wanted to study Allosaurus, then you would need to go to rocks from the Jurassic period. And so you would need to study geologic maps and find where are areas where Jurassic rocks are at the surface of the Earth. And another thing to consider is, can you get to the rocks in that spot? For example, in New Jersey, there's lots of rocks that were deposited during the Cretaceous period, but right now they're covered up by malls or streets or sidewalks, whereas in Montana, they're not covered up by buildings, and so you can just walk out and look for dinosaur fossils.
So in some areas in the United States, we have really good fossils, but maybe not necessarily dinosaurs. So for our friends in Wisconsin and Illinois, you unfortunately don't have any dinosaurs. Trust me, I spent my entire childhood looking for them and they're not there. There's the wrong kind of rocks there. If you go to the very southernmost tip of Illinois, down by basically by Metropolis, you get some rocks that are about the same age as some of the rocks out here in Montana, but so far no dinosaurs have ever been found. So you really need to basically grab a geologic map and take a look at all these areas which have been kind of, the work's been done for us a little bit. And so you can say, okay, well, if I want to find a Diplodocus, one of the big long-necked sauropods from the late Jurassic, here are states or here are areas that have late Jurassic rocks, and you can look at Wyoming and Colorado and Utah and parts of Arizona and all the way up here into Montana and find that there's late Jurassic rocks there. If you're looking for Tyrannosaurus rex, if you're looking for big T-Rex teeth like this, you're going to look for the very latest Cretaceous stuff. So stuff that dates between 66 and 67-ish million years in age. And so you're going to look at rocks that are found here in eastern Montana, the western Dakotas, up into Canada a little bit, and down into parts of Wyoming, Utah, and New Mexico. So you have to know your geology, and you also have to know your geography. Are these things accessible? And then you also have to get the right permissions, because you can't just go out and say, oh, look at that rock over there, that looks really nice, I'm just going to go start digging up a hole in there and finding fossils and keeping them. That land might be privately owned, so you'd have to get permission from the landowner, or that land might be owned by the state or the federal government. So all the land here in the United States and also in Canada is kind of been divvied up. And so that's another thing you would need to look into is the usage and the ownership of that land. Is it owned by the federal government, the state? Is it owned by a school? Is it owned by a private individual? So all those things you've got to kind of put together before you just go out with your rock hammer and your shovel and start looking for fossils.
All right, this is going to be rapid fire. I have about half a dozen questions, and we have less than 5 minutes. So are you guys ready for some rapid questions?
Yes. Sure.
Okay, here we go. This is coming from Chicago, from room 113. What was the last kind of dinosaur to go extinct?
Well, so here in eastern Montana, and what's known as the Hell Creek Formation represents the very end of the age of dinosaurs, at least in Montana. And when we're in this area, what we find a lot of is Triceratops going right up to the border between the age of dinosaurs and what came after the dinosaurs. So Triceratops is probably one of the last dinosaurs. We don't know which was exactly the last one yet, but at least in here, I'd be confident that Triceratops was probably up there towards the end.
Great. What was the fastest dinosaur?
The fastest dinosaur. I think that you could make a very strong argument that your oviraptors and your ornithomimids, which are they belong to the group, they're within the group of theropod or meat-eating dinosaurs. The oviraptors kind of look like these weird parrots on steroids, beakless, or they get toothless beaks. And the ornithomimids are the ones that, if you're a fan of Jurassic Park, they're the gallimimuses that are flocking around and running. We can look at them and we can take a look at their limb proportions, and their lower limb bone, their tibia, is significantly longer than their femur. So their legs are built more like ostriches are today. And so we can look at those proportions that are similar to an ostrich and say, well, this animal could probably run fairly fast, maybe as fast as an ostrich.
All right, we still have a few more here. How do you tell if a fossil is from a male or a female dinosaur?
Oh, that's a good question. So it's very difficult to tell just by looking at a bone dinosaur fossil if it's a male or a female. But one way that it is possible to determine gender is if you look inside the fossils of dinosaurs, you look at them under a microscope. What's been discovered in some examples, including the Tyrannosaurus rex that this tooth came from, what was found inside of it was a layer of bone called medullary bone. This is bone that today is only found in birds that are in the process of laying eggs. And so that would mean that that dinosaur was a girl.
Great. Do teeth break easily?
Oh, well, easily I don't know. Do they break? Yes. Do dinosaurs shed their teeth? Yes. Dinosaurs are somewhat lucky in that they are constantly regenerating their teeth. This part here is the crown. So I'm going to put my fingers around basically where the gum line would have been on this Tyrannosaurus rex. The rest of this is all the root of the tooth. We all know we have roots of our teeth that go into our jaws and whatnot. This is the part that would extend above the gum line. And as that tooth would push up, because there's another tooth that would fit in right here, coming up behind it, that the acids in your mouth would weaken this part here, and over time, that Tyrannosaurus is going to crunch down and this is going to break off. And then the rest of this would dissolve away or get pushed out, and another tooth would come in behind it. Shed teeth for dinosaurs are found all over, whether they're Triceratops or duckbills or Tyrannosaurs or the raptors, the dromaeosaurs. It's really, and you almost always find them, this part, the crown has broken off. So it happened quite a bit, but they didn't care because they had another one coming up right behind it anyhow.
Two last questions, and two folks have the same question here. What is the longest dinosaur?
The longest dinosaur is probably going to be, it's going to be a toss-up between a dinosaur known as Seismosaurus, which estimates on Seismosaurus, one of the long-necked dinosaurs, it's basically a super big Diplodocus like this. Some researchers even think it might be just a really, really big old Diplodocus. Some estimates have put this at the 140-foot range. There's also two other dinosaurs that are really, really big. One's called Patagotitan, and it's going up right now at the Field Museum in Chicago. There's a cast of it where Sue used to be. That's in, I think, the 130 range, 120, 130 range. Yep. And there's a dinosaur called Argentinosaurus. Both Patagotitan and Argentinosaurus are from South America, from Patagonia. And they're both in the 120 to 130 foot range. And those two dinosaurs probably would be somewhere between 80 and 100 tons in mass. So not only were they some of the longest dinosaurs, they were the heaviest and approached the weight of a blue whale.
Great. So we're at the top of the hour, but we have one last question. You won't have much time to argue.
Okay.
But is Troodon the smartest dinosaur?
Maybe?
Yes.
Maybe.
Maybe.
That's great.
Maybe is a good answer.
Fantastic. Well, we are out of time for this morning. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody, today at the Museum of the Rockies. We hope you have a fantastic dinosaur week and learn a whole bunch about dinosaurs in the next couple days. If you've got any feedback for us, we'd love to hear it. Feel free to type into that chat box, or we'll send you an email later, too, to gather that feedback. As we sign off here, we'll let one last question come through, but if you need to leave us, thank you so much for joining us. And gentlemen, if you could end on how we came up with the word dinosaur. Where does the name dinosaur come from?
Dinosaur comes from, it's a Latin term that was derived by a 19th century philosopher and researcher named Sir Richard Owen, and he was trying to get these fossils that people were finding that had reptile-like characters and put them into a new group, and he came up with the term dinosaur, which means terribly great lizard, fearfully great lizard, because it was a completely new group of animals that they didn't really even quite know how to classify. So sometimes you'll hear it referred to as a terrible lizard, but the actual Latin is fearfully great lizard.
Great. Well, on that, have a good week, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Happy Dinosaur Week.